Mechanics Hall has been a landmark in East Princeton for, as long as East Princeton's been there, just about. And, I've lived in East Princeton since 1989, and a bunch of neighbors and I had talked about resurrecting what was formerly called the East Princeton Village Improvement Society, which arose due to the geographical isolation of East Princeton compared to the downtown area. And if you look back at the records, you see that East Princeton had a history of sort of taking care of itself. So the East Princeton Village Improvement Society created the park, and they installed lamps and modified the roads, etc. And so beyond the sort of civic or civil aspects of engineering, there was also a civic aspect in that they brought people together, they took care of each other, essentially, right? So, that was just a very charming idea of a community that looked after itself. And we had some issues with traffic that had come up, and we brought some people together. Obviously there was this question about the disposition of Mechanics Hall, because it's been abandoned since essentially 1980, give or take a few years. And there had been an effort townwide to develop a master plan. And I think this was, I think back now, it was probably about 2005 approximately. And the part of the master plan is identified key sites throughout the town, historic buildings, historic places, etc. And it was really a fascinating time, I think, for everyone in town to learn about the other parts of the town. And Mechanics Hall came up as one of those places that is sort of crucial to the history of the town, particularly East Princeton. And it was described as really the cornerstone of East Princeton, and architecturally, sort of the beginning of East Princeton. So a bunch of us got together and formed a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're officially listed, and we have that tax status. And since then, we basically have tried to raise awareness of the history of Mechanics Hall and East Princeton, and also trying to raise money. And we're right now in the middle of a big push to try and develop a plan going forwards with the building, which will hopefully make it sustainable, so that we can fix it, and sort of pay to fix it, and then have it keep going as a used building by the residents of the entire town, right? And if you haven't been in, it's an interesting building. It was built, well, the money was raised in, I think, 1853, and it was built sometime afterwards. Not sure exactly how long it took. Yeah, it says 1854 on the building. Yeah. That number's kind of soft, right? But there had been a school in East Princeton prior to that, and due to the success of the mills on Keys Brook, there are so many new families in town that they needed a bigger school and a more modernized school. And I think as this is a little bit of my imagination, but sort of a tribute to what they had accomplished already in East Princeton, that they had now at the time of 1854 were developing, I think, the third mill on Keys Brook, and really were experiencing quite a bit of economic success and pretty impressive industrialization in terms of the output. There was hundreds of thousands of chairs being generated just in that little area every year. And so they built this Greek Revival building, which was very much in keeping with what was happening at the time all along the East Coast and DC, etc. and it was a real point of pride, I think, in the community. The building was built as a school, but also as a civic meeting place for local government and civic functions as well as private functions. So on the first floor, originally it was a single classroom, which was later broken into two as the years went by. And on the second floor is a multi-use space, which has on one end a stage, which we're not sure whether that was original or not, and has just room for any kind of performance, just a lot of open space, right? So what we read in the history and what we've heard from older citizens who actually were around when the hall was still being used is that upstairs space was where everybody was to be found. That was just the place to be for this community.